Hi, my name is Sean. Welcome to my studio. I am going to attempt today to add a effects return to my Tascam Model 12. I'm not really a podcaster and I've never made a video before, so please excuse me if I'm not super charismatic. So I'm going to turn this around if I can. So here's the Model 12. It's a great little mixer. There's a couple more models in this series. There's the Model 16 and the Model 24. The 16 and the 24 are analog, are basically analog mixers with a multi-track recorder sort of attached to them. But the Model 12 is digital on the inside, so it's a little bit different. So you can't just you can't just hook anything in anywhere and just assume that you have an analog signal there. Now, if you look on the back of this, there are a bunch of sends. Here. They have sends for the submix output, and then there's an aux1 and an aux2 send. And there's some inserts, but there's no effects return. So if you have an external effect you want to loop around through it, the way that you would do that is you would send it out of either one of these aux channels or out through the sub mix, which you click by selecting tracks of these sub buttons. And you would send that out, and then you would pipe it back through one of these inputs. Either use a stereo one if you got a stereo effect, or one of these mono ones. But the problem is that you basically lose one of your channels. I'm using this for recording complete songs, and I really can't afford to lose an entire stereo pair of channels just for the effects return. So that is why I started thinking about how I could add an effects return to this thing. Now, you look on the block diagram for this guy, and it's got labeled right here. You can see ADC, that's analog digital conversion, and you can see that for each of these tracks, the input channels, you've got an analog digital converter, and then on the other end where it comes out, digital analog converters sending to all these outputs. Okay, which means that all these, the buses and all this stuff in here, those aren't physical channels. Those are virtual. Those are digital signal paths inside of the processor. Right? There's no literal signal. So I started thinking like, well, what I would really like to do is have an effects return that just goes straight into the main bus. And then I started looking down here in the corner here. There's two more. Besides all the ones for the channels, there's two more analog digital converters labeled here. And those are attached to the Bluetooth. And I thought to myself, well, that's weird. Why would they label that? Bluetooth is digital, and the inside of this machine is digital. How come you would need an analog digital converter there? And I think that the reason why that's there is because Tascam probably uses the same Bluetooth module on the Model 12 that they used on the 16 and the 24. The 16 and the 24 are analog mixers, so they need to have an analog output in their Bluetooth module to send that out. And if they use the same one, it probably goes from the Bluetooth, gets converted to an analog signal, and then back to digital in a different form in order to go into the unit. And there's nothing wrong with that. That might be how I would have done it too if I was in their position. I've never noticed any loss of signal quality. So Tascam makes really, really good digital analog converters. They're very high quality. And so I was thinking, okay, well, what if you look at where these are headed, you can select to choose them to send them to 9 and 10, and you can also send them straight into the main bus. And that's exactly where you would want an effects return to go. So I started thinking to myself, I wonder if I could find the point where there's that analog signal inside the board, attach a pair of stereo inputs to that, and then use that to have my effects return. And so let's open up the Model 12 and see if we can do that. So here's my plan for how I'm going to wire this. I don't know exactly how the Model 12 is set up internally, but I imagine that there is some source impedance for the signal. I imagine that it's probably going into some kind of buffer. The way that I put it together here, it's a unity buffer, but I don't know if it's amplifying or not. And then it's got some output impedance, and then it's going into the ADC. Same thing over here, it's going into the ADC. So I measured the resistance to ground, and these are around 18K resistance to ground. So I thought I'll make my signal come in with about the same strength. So I've got my left and right channel. I'm going to pin them to ground with 220K resistors. I'm going to send them through a pair of capacitors. I'm going to send them through 22K resistor. Those are mixing resistors, and then we're just going to pipe them into those channels. Like I said, I don't know for sure what's over here on this side of the equation, but I don't think a signal with a 22K resistor could do damage to the circuit board, so at least I should be okay there. It might be quiet. It might be too quiet, depending on what these resistors are. 22K might be too large a resistance. I feel like it's probably not too small, though. So here's the plug that I'm going to use to attempt to connect in my new stereo out. I'm going to use a stereo plug so that I only have to put one hole in my Model 12, which I'm not super excited about putting any holes in it, but, you know, we're going to give it a shot. And then I'll use a, mono to stereo pair cable in order to connect that to my effects units. I think I have one right, no I don't. I don't know where that is, but I have one anyways. I needed to find a ground point, and there are lots and lots of ground points on this. The closest one is probably that guy right there. Right here, that's a ground point, and it looks like it's pretty shiny, so I should be able to connect to that pretty easily. And then my other two cables will go on the left and right of the Bluetooth. And yeah, let's try it out. All right, so what I did was, in order to find out whether this plug works or not before I actually soldered it in, I left it connected, and I just have the output just kind of dangling there, and that is plugged in to the output of this reverb unit. The reverb unit is plugged into aux 2 out. So we should have the signal path going out here into the reverb unit, out of the reverb unit into my stereo effects return. And I've only got one thing plugged into the input here, and it's this vocal mic right there. It's SM57. So you're witnessing this in real time. It's either going to explode or this is going to be an epic victory. Okay, here we go. Oh, it's not plugged in. Let me plug it in first. This time it's plugged in. Had a moment of panic there. Okay, let's see. Does it turn on? Yes, it turns on. Okay, I figured out what the dry level was, and I also figured out that I had forgotten to turn the aux 2 sends on, so there was nothing going out to my reverb unit. But now, having turned those up, I can confirm that the reverb return does in fact work. And if I turn this send all the way down, then and that's off. And just to make sure, I'm going to put this all the way down and mute it so we can make sure that that is actually the external unit. Which it does seem to be. That is super cool. But yeah, I wonder what happens. We're going to find out right now. If I change this assign to off, does that still... Check, check, check. Nope. So it is coming through the Bluetooth. Apparently the assign still works the way you would expect. It's the part where I'm supposed to tell you to like and subscribe or something like that. I don't know. I might make some more videos if I do some other cool stuff. I might show you some of the effects pedals that I made myself. Stuff like this one right here I made. I made some other things too. I also wanted to mention that when it comes to doing effects loops, one thing that you can do, if you're bouncing down, you can send your channels through the submix or through these aux channels out to some effects, and you can come back in through the main, and you should be able to record to the master track. So you can bounce down that way without having to burn any of these tracks for a return or anything like that. However, there is one caveat, and this applies to the vanilla Model 12, even without this modification. If you bounce part of a signal, but not the whole thing, in other words, if you were to take like a drum track with four drum tracks, and you were to try to bounce down the overheads, but not the kick and the snare, right, or something like that, when you send your signal out and back in, it is going through a digital to analog, back to digital conversion, but the internal signal going straight to the main bus is not going through that extra conversion step, and which, you know, the Tascam analog to digital converters, they're very fast and they're really high quality. However, they do introduce probably, I don't know what their buffer is, probably like 32 samples or something like that of latency, which means that the signal that you sent through the loop and the signal that you went straight to the main bus are not going to be perfectly in phase. There was going to be some phase cancellation. So if you're bouncing down drums, bounce down all of the drum tracks at once. Don't try to bounce down half of them and then send half of them through the main bus. Okay, that's not going to work. So I'm going to show you now. I'm going to show you how I connected it on the inside. You can see right there in that Bluetooth cable, I connected one to the left side pin, and I connected the other one to the right side pin. I did wind up grounding that to right there. That turned out to be a good spot for a ground. I can't do it on that side because there's a circuit board in the way, but there is plenty of room right here. The trick is that when I drill a hole into the case, I don't have to worry about grounding because it's already grounded, but when I drill a hole into the case, I am very worried that little shreds of little bits of metal, little bits of steel are going to be flying everywhere, and they are going to land willy-nilly who knows where on the circuit board and cross things that aren't meant to be crossed. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to surround the area that I'm drilling with Gorilla Tape. I'm just going to tape all around it like a cup. I mean, the other thing, obviously, the thing I probably should be doing here is pulling the entire circuit board out, all three of them. But in order to do that, I have to pull every knob. I have to pull every, output thing out of the back. I have to pull every knob off of the top. I have to take the whole thing out. And I don't know, the risk of breaking it doing that is probably just as great. I mean, look, I would have to unscrew all of these, and then, am I going to put those all back together and not mess it up? Who knows? So we're just going to wing it. So here we're ready to drill the hole. Well, almost ready. I haven't put the tape on there. And I put some clamps on there, but they're they're just barely on there. See, they're very gentle as I could make them. It's not really holding it in place. It's just there to, I don't know, keep it from wiggling too much. All right, here's my little shavings catcher. Hopefully that'll keep anything from getting into the circuit board. By the way, I'm putting a little stop collar thing on all my drill bits that will hopefully make it difficult for me to drill too deep and hit the circuit board. So if I put that piece of tape on there, it should go no deeper than that. All right, so you can see I made my barrier a little taller because as I started drilling the bigger holes, I did see metal shavings start to go a little further and to fling upwards higher. So I, to be safe, made that nice big tall guard. Okay, that was nerve-wracking. That was nerve-wracking. But we're done. There's a hole in the Tascam. There is what the final hookup looks like. Clipped into the Bluetooth. There's the ground, and those are all nice and wrapped in heat shrink tubing so that they don't short anything out. And there's your output, or sorry, those are your effects return. And here's what it looks like from the outside, all plugged in and working perfectly. So again, I got kind of lucky with this. Did not mess it up, didn't break it. Everything works, and now I have a nice effects return. It goes straight into the main bus. It does not go into any of the channels. So it acts just like the internal effects do. If you want to record it, you got to bounce down to the main bus and record it from there. I want to say one more thing. Earlier, I was talking about phase relationships, and I was talking about how you would only want some things to be in phase. And I wanted to clarify that when it comes to effects that already mess with the phase, like a reverb does not have to, like the pure wet reverb sound does not have to be in phase perfectly with the original signal because it's delayed and reverbed anyways. So it doesn't matter. In fact, if you look at any of the effects that Tascam has got, ping pong, chorus, flanger, delay, and reverb, those things all involve at least a few milliseconds of delay, and then taking that delayed signal and mixing it in one way or the other back with the original signal. So all of their effects are ones that, if you put some of the channels and not others through their effects, the phase relationship does not matter. And you will not have any problems whatsoever as long as you do the same thing. Any effect that they have listed here is probably safe to put through the send return, and you will not have to worry about phase at all. And hey guys, I got one final thing to mention. I am a musician, and I have written and recorded some demos of a whole bunch of songs, and if you are interested in them, I'll put the links down below to my SoundCloud, and you can go check them out. I think that they're really good, and you can decide for yourself.